Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Work of Design Live. Well, everyone's coming in and joining us. Why don't you put your name and maybe where you're joining us from in the chat? My name is Alexia, and I'm currently joining from very sunny San Francisco, California.
And I'm Erica, and I'll be joining you today. And I am joining from very cold and blizzardy Grand Rapids, Michigan. So,
All right, let's go ahead and get started. From sunny San Diego. Great to see some sun. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Work of Design Live webinar, 2025 Industry Insights, Key Trends from the U.S. Design Industry Benchmark Report, brought to you by Studio Designer. My name is Alexia, and I'm on the marketing team here at Studio Designer. And today we are thrilled to have Erica from ThinkLab here to share insights on the trends, challenges, and opportunities that are shaping the U.S. design industry in 2025. Erica is an experienced interior designer and the head of research and content at ThinkLab. Today, she'll be diving into key findings from the U.S. Design Industry Benchmark Report, including the growing economic impact of interior designers, emerging sources of inspiration, and the must-have tools shaping the business of design. As a quick reminder, we will have time for a Q&A at the end, so please make sure to put any questions into our Q&A box. And this session is being recorded and will be sent to all registrants, so don't worry if you have to leave early, you won't miss out. It's going to be a really fascinating discussion, so let's get started. Erica, over to you.
thank you, Alexia, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm excited to really unpack and uncover a lot of the research that we are diving into at ThinkLab this year. And this is part of a study that we do every year over year, to see how the industry is changing. Now, for those of you who are or are not familiar with ThinkLab, ThinkLab is the market research firm that sits within the Sandow Design Group. So we are designers by trade and researchers by choice, and we are fully immersed in this industry of the built environment. And so one of our passions is to see and benchmark how things are changing year over year. So that's where we'll dive in today. And as Alexia mentioned, we will have Q&A, so feel free to add questions as they arise in your mind into the Q&A. I won't see them right away, but I'll try to get to them at the end of our discussion today. So we'll go ahead and dive in. This is hot off the press. You all are the first ones to get this report out. So we're excited to uncover how things have changed this year. Now, here's kind of our general flow of how we'll go through our study today, but we'll go through step by step, so not to worry there. Now, I will say this is a unique study for ThinkLab because it's so important that we really get a representation across our industry, across North America. So we do partner with these wonderful brands like Studio Designer to send out the survey. So many of you may have participated in taking this survey earlier in last fall. So we do capture over 1,000 respondents every year, and that helps us to really see how things are changing over time. Now, key shifts. If you had to only hear a few quick insights, here are some key shifts that we have seen year over year. One is that the employment of designers has actually decreased year over year. Now, some of that is likely due to the retirement rates of those who are more senior and experienced in the design field. But interesting to see that overall the number of interior designers did decrease this year by 3%, while the number of architects actually increased by 3% this year. Now, we also take a look at where designer employment is booming. Where are these design-centric places within the United States? This year, Miami, Dallas, and Atlanta all saw the largest increases in designer employment, although some of that was a bit of right sizing because some of those markets had dipped a bit over the last couple of years. So we'll talk about that more in a moment. Now, this year, we actually started tracking AI adoption within the design industry and how that's being utilized. And we're excited to dive into that more to figure out how we can best use AI to help us as design professionals to be most effective and efficient with our time, while also leaving our precious mental brain space to the creative work that we love so much. So that's a new benchmark that we'll be looking at this year. Also new, we started tracking which social media platforms are being utilized and kind of what that behavior looks like a little bit. So we'll talk about that as well. And then when it comes to places that architects and designers go for inspiration versus information, we actually saw the biggest shift that we have seen since 2020. And that was that manufacturers' sales reps actually surpassed a manufacturer's website for a source of information on the commercial side of the industry. So this is a big change because websites have been at the top as a source of inspiration there. But the pendulum swings, right? It used to be reps before websites became so well equipped. Websites really took their place, and now we're seeing reps becoming increasingly important as well, as that source of trust and hopefully that key source of truth of what's the most up-to-date information. So let's dive into our first section here, which is the economic power of design. Now, this is the total available market for products that are specified by commercial and residential interior designers. Now, is all of this total available market directly a specification from design professionals? No. However, much of it is, and on top of that, we like to consider the fact that while some of these purchases are going to be consumer-based purchases, design professionals are really the ones who are setting the tone and the trends for each of these product categories because there is so much influence in the specification power of design professionals that it ends up trickling down, of course, and impacting the product development and marketing and forward-leaning outlooks for each of these product categories. So pretty impressive to see $380 billion worth of products being directly or indirectly influenced by the work of design professionals. Now, I mentioned designers having incredible specification power, and that is really an understatement. I don't know how I can best say that it is an impressive amount of specification purchasing power, but the average designer across the United States has 40 times the purchasing spending power of the average American consumer. So if you think about a consumer going out and buying one thing in a year, that designer will essentially buy 40 times that one thing. Now, if you work for one of the interior design giants of design firms, ThinkLab is a sister company to Interior Design, and we do the research behind the giants of design firms. If you work at one of those firms, the specification power can be upwards of 140 times or more the spending power of the average American consumer. So we like to emphasize this to the design community to underscore just the power that you have with those choices. So every specification that you make really does have a ripple effect. Going back to that $380 billion, there's a reason there is so much direct and indirect influence that you all have over what products come to market and what products leave. Now let's look at the profile of the architecture and design profession at a high level. We'll start high level and kind of boil it down from there, if you will. Now, comparatively, when you look at the two professions, in the United States today, there's 92,200 designers, interior designers employed, and 127,300 architects. Here's where you see that 3% down, 3% up year over year. It is interesting to see where people are employed throughout the industry because we are seeing some shifts and looking at the size of firms that designers are employed at, the type of firms they're employed at, but this gives you a relative perspective of how the two professions compare. Now, I mentioned the size of the firms. We are, by nature, a very fragmented industry. So when you look at the number of firms there are within the industry, 83% of firms have 4 or less employees. That's a tremendous amount, which means that business comes from many, many, many small aggregated choices, all, rolled up together. There really aren't too many really huge mega firms that are employing hundreds of people. It's really an industry of a collective group of smaller entities. And there's tremendous power in that, but there's also sometimes a need for more connection peer to peer. And I know that this is one great way that Studio Designer offers that connection for you all is to dial in and do some collective learning together, connect with one another, because it can feel like you're a little bit siloed if you don't have the opportunity to get out of those firm walls, so to speak. So just to say here, if it feels sometimes like you're all on many small islands, that's kind of the truth. It is an industry of many small islands, but collectively, so much power within our control. Now, where are designers employed? We track the top cities because it is interesting to see how migration happens over time. During the pandemic, we saw New York City's numbers plummet, and now they've rebounded back over time. Now it's interesting, over this last year, Chicago took a big hit in the number of designers employed there, dropping by 22%, which is a big drop, although they're still number 3 on the list, which historically they have been. What's changed since last year, though, Denver came back on the list. It was previously in the top 10 for metropolitan areas of top designer employment. And Dallas and Miami both grew, but Dallas and Miami are the two that I mentioned earlier in that key takeaways slide, that those were really right-sized. So it says Dallas grew by 25%, but over the last couple of years, it had dropped by 25% or more. So it's really seeing a rebound into a market of prominence. Same with Miami, up 36% year over year. Tremendous, tremendous growth. However, that market had been hit hard. In 2022 and 2023, we saw quite a bit of designer employment loss in that market. So really, those two have kind of right-sized back, but we do like to see how things are shifting over time, just to see, which markets tend to be more stable for designer employment. I will say that the southern cities do remain stronger than the coastal cities at this point. Now, location quotient is truly a design nerds type of statistic, because not everybody gets really excited about location quotients. You may have never heard of a location quotient before, and that's completely fine. But essentially, what that is saying is if we consider all of the United States and those 92,200 designers, on average, if we averaged that out over the population for one designer per X number of people, these locations have more designers to population. So for instance, Naples isn't a huge, huge market metropolitan wise, but they have 5 times the national average number of designers in that market comparatively to a separate metropolitan area, which may be closer to that 1-to-1 ratio overall. So these just tend to be, while they might not be the largest markets, they are very design centric in nature. Several in coastal areas, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, but then you also see some in more of the mountainous areas, Montana, Utah, Colorado, as well as Arkansas. So interesting to see that here as well. Excuse me. So let's look at the profile of the architecture and design firms now. From a workload perspective, the average number of projects that a designer is working on each year depending on the firm's focus. If the firm is focused solely on residential work, The average number of projects being worked on in a year is 22. If that firm does an equal mix of both residential and commercial work, that project load is 20 per year. Now, what's interesting is both of these are an increase. So if y'all are feeling very busy, here is the validation to back that up. You are very busy, more so than you were last year, taking on more work than in previous years. So interesting to see the demand for design services and how that's increasing project loads year over year. When it comes to fees per project, on the residential side of our industry, most residential project budgets are between $100,000 and $250,000 each year. Now, this is very similar to last year, but if we compare the slide that I just looked at, which is the number of projects and the number of or the size of the budget, this is a really strong indicator, because if the budget remains the same and there's more projects, it means that we're kind of moving past that more but smaller project sizes that we saw maybe in 2023, early 24. And we're just kind of stabilizing at the size and also increasing the number of projects. So really healthy indicator of where the market's going. Now, how residential design firms structure their fees, this is a new metric for us. Something we've been curious about, something we talk to designers about very regularly, is really understanding how the industry can best support their way of financially supporting themselves. What's interesting to see here is 41% bill by the project. It's a straight project fee, and then they also mark up the products that they are selling into that project. Almost equally, 35%, so just 6% less, bill by the hour, and then also mark up the products. So really kind of a split in the industry as far as how this billing is happening. What we'll say there is, if anyone is on today from a brand or a product manufacturer, I can't emphasize enough the importance of how your trade program services these design professionals, because it is such a make or break experience with the brand on how your trade program is designed to create that brand loyalty. Now, what the budget breakdown looks like by project is a bit different as well. So on the residential side, we see construction taking up 28% of the budget. I will say on the commercial side, construction has been taking up a higher percentage of that overall budget number, in part because the labor shortages, inflation costs on building materials, things like that, construction costs have been a higher portion of the design fees overall. But we see less of that happening here and slightly more going to the design fees, which you see here in gray. So I would say that from an industry perspective, the commercial side of the industry is probably looking to the residential side to figure out how they're making that happen, because that's a really healthy balance that we're seeing here. Now, we also want to look forward as to what is that client appetite for investing, right? We don't want clients that are hesitant on pulling the trigger, writing the checks, making those investments. So what does that client appetite look like for investing in architectural and design services? Here, we see that residential clients look slightly more eager than their commercial counterparts. Not a ton of change year over year here, which I think maybe is an indicator that, you know, the overall macro level economy has kind of smoothed out a bit. But seeing that, you know, the majority are either average or eager to extremely eager, really only seeing 26% in that tentative or extremely tentative. So Again, really good health of your clientele and their willingness to invest in design services overall. Now, one of the things that I think is really interesting is to kind of swim upstream from a research methodology perspective. We know that construction is going to lead those design services in many instances. Well, you might be brought in before construction begins. Oftentimes, renovations are happening, things like that. So it is interesting to look at where there is residential growth from a construction perspective, because those markets will tend to then generate more business for you all in the next year or two as they complete drawings and get, groundbreaking underway. You're probably going to get involved. So hopefully this lends itself to some great business leaning forward. When we look at it overall, the large metro core counties and suburban counties in states like Texas, Florida, California, they're all really expected to experience some strong residential construction growth. That's particularly exciting for anybody who's in California, because over the last few years, California's been a bit more constrained as far as their growth within that market because of the cost of living there. So really exciting to see that change. Florida in particular does continue to see a really robust demand for new housing because it's an attractive place for the lifestyle, economic opportunities. So you are seeing people leave the blizzardy Midwest and migrate south to Florida, which is understandable. So definitely seeing some key growth for construction in that market. Now, as far as those top 15 cities, these are the top 15 cities with the newest construction, with new construction homes sold. So you're going to see over here, here's their ranking amongst the top 15. Here's what that metro area is. Here's the number of new construction homes that were sold in this last year, and here's the median sale price. So I think all of that is a lot to take in. It might be a little bit of a seeing eye chart, and we will have Alexia and Studio Designer follow up with you all so that you have a PDF of this and you can study it a bit more later if you feel so inclined. But to see the number of new homes sold in Houston at 1,751 last year with a median value of 347,000. Again, really strong growth in that Texas market in particular. Now, here's a quote from Carl Harris, who's the chairman at the National Association of Home Builders. Again, really positive. While housing affordability remains low, which we all have seen, builders are feeling more optimistic about the 2025 market conditions. So I think that everyone has had a chance to adjust to the new normal. Housing affordability is low. However, there is a housing shortage. And so we're adjusting to a new normal, a new concept of how to finance these purchases, these renovations. So I think that there is some new sentiment as far as how this is going to look moving forward. Now, in this section, we're going to take a look at the personal profile of architects and designers, really exploring kind of some intricacies of what this demographic looks like overall. So we looked at the top 5 metropolitan areas of employment, and New York was number 1 there. But it's important to note that while New York City as a metropolitan area is number 1, when you look at the states overall, California has the most designers employed there, followed by New York, and then Florida, Texas, and Colorado actually in 5th place this year. So unlike architects, designers tend to have more employment in Colorado than Illinois. You saw that drop of 22% in the Chicago market that I mentioned earlier. Illinois would have been number 5 on the list, whereas Colorado has now replaced Illinois on that top 5 list. As far as the demographics, the age of our industry overall, the purple here is going to represent designers, the yellow is representing architects. The median age for architects and designers is 45 now. So we are kind of an aging industry. Had we looked at this slide last year, we had more people in this 65 and older, which I think is part of where that decline in employment came from, because you only see 4% at 24 and younger, new grads right out of college. So I think that this shows a little bit of a spectrum of kind of how the population is moving through our industry. As far as what degrees are held amongst this profession, on the residential side of the industry, we know that this is oftentimes a second career choice for many people. The number one degree is interior design, so that makes perfect logical sense that this was a passion and something that many went to school for. But the second option here is actually none of the above. It's not a design related degree. So it might be somebody from finance or, from the legal sector, who knows? But we do know that interior design often attracts people as a second career. So we do see some of that here as well. I think that one of the things that's interesting, though, is the number of designers who work in this side of the industry without that degree did have a 7% increase year over year. So a little bit of a change there as well, really attracting some new talent into the industry. Now, how you all work, I think maybe for you, this might seem like it resonates a lot. Maybe it contradicts how you work. And we'd love to hear about that. We'd love to support group therapy in the chat or in the Q&A here as well. But what we see here is kind of a little bit of a contrast in between the residential side of the industry and the commercial side, especially in this yellow bar, which is completing drawings, renderings, and presentation to communicate that design intent, helping your clients to visualize, understand, and really get on board with your design concept and vision for the project. It's about a quarter of the time on the residential side, whereas it's more than a third of the time on the commercially focused side. So this is an area where we feel like there could be room for improvement for the commercially focused brands to support designers and architects with maybe better design drawing files or image libraries, things like that, so that they can help have that compelling information to, again, present to their clients. Now, we did ask, which product categories are you specifying on the majority of your design projects? This does do a lot of flip-flopping between the two sides of the industry, as you can kind of see all of these crosshairs here in the middle, especially up top and even through the middle, we see a lot of shifting. But what's interesting to note is while they do rank differently, if you look at the percentages, they aren't all that different. Paints, stains, and coatings being 89% of designers specify these on the majority of their projects. For the commercial side, where it's 94 here. So we're talking about a 5% delta. So while there is some mix and matching here, I will say that even at the lowest percentages here, like building products or smart technology, it's relatively low across the board. And when you look at things like all of these projects are specified on, 3/4 of designers' projects, there's a lot of choices that are going into every project that you're working on. And that's something that I always speak to the brand side of our industry, is that while they're focused on their one piece of the pie, they need to understand that for you all, it is just one piece. You have so many pieces of the pie that you're trying to pull together, and to have some empathy and some patience there, because certainly you're working hard to make sure that all of these things are coordinated well. Now, here's one that I think is really interesting to dig into the challenges, dig into the frustrations. So, what are those biggest product specification challenges in the everyday work that you do? What are some of the biggest frustrations that you have? On the residential side of the industry, it is finding the appropriate appropriate product for that client. We know that it's so incredibly important that that space feels like it represents and resonates with your clientele. And there isn't a one size fits all solution that you can just pull from your last project file as a reference. So we understand that that is a really challenging part of your work. So how might we as an industry create some filters to be able to find some of those products a little bit more easily? Followed by to the trade pricing. And I mentioned this earlier, but the to the trade programs are so incredibly important because of how fees and incomes are earned in this side of the industry. Beyond that, it's actually getting samples. So that remains pretty consistent year over year. Now, we started tracking this metric last year. So this was a new metric for us that we started tracking last year. What's interesting here is you only see red, blue, and yellow represented in this chart. And that is what is the demand for healthy spaces and sustainable products over the next 2 years. Everyone that took the survey said it's either staying the same or increasing or greatly increasing. So we are seeing kind of a shift, whether it's led by the architect and designer really kind of pulling their clientele along with them and saying, hey, this is really important, or maybe they're not saying anything at all and just making those sustainable product selections. But we are seeing an increase here and over the next couple years. And that's a real positive because since tracking this last year we also saw the same similar types of metrics with no one saying that it was going to decrease or greatly decrease. Now, I did mention AI was new this year. This is a fascinating one, and I think it's one that's a hot topic. It is a sensitive topic because of the type of work that we do as creative professionals. What you see here is a third of residential designers are using AI in some way. Might be that they're using it to write a design brief, might be that they're using it to pull together sources that are available to as far as different distributors for ordering products. Maybe they're using it for creating renderings. So there's a lot to uncover here yet, but it is interesting to see that 2/3 are either using it or see that that is going to have a place in their profession and in their work over the next couple years. So interesting to see where this goes. You can stay in touch with us at ThinkLab as we uncover this more throughout the year. Now, what do you need? What are the tools and resources that you need to be well equipped to do the work that you do every day? I mentioned the inspiration and information. Now, I did mention that on the commercial side, the manufacturer sales rep, which you see in green here, that has moved to number one for the source of information. But what we see here is that for inspiration, when you're just trying to keep your bucket full of new concepts, new ideas, new products, and really kind of creating that mental Rolodex of inspiration for that you can pull from when you need it on a new project, we see that trade publications, magazines focused on this design industry, design and showrooms and design centers being a key source for both inspiration and information on this side of the industry. And then you see some of that social media come into play. And we did track that. So we'll get to that slide in a moment. But you see Instagram. I think that's a great platform for highly visual, being able to just kind of absorb what's new and what's next, kind of on our casual scroll throughout our day. But on the flip side, where you go for information, once you have decided on a product direction and you're ready for next steps, whether it be pricing, detailed information, lead times, anything like that, the residential side of the industry is leaning heavily on that manufacturer's website. So we're hoping to have those as well equipped as possible, and really as robust as possible with all those detailed product pages to have all of the information available. And if they require a login, to make sure that all of that gated information is then made available through the trade program. On the trade shows side of things, we asked which trade shows were most attended, and High Point and KBIS were #1 and #2 for the residential community. Now, Las Vegas market kind of came in third place there, but you see some drop off after that. So really those top 2 or 3 being the primary sources of trade show inspiration for this side of the industry. We also saw design media sources in that inspiration category. Here are the different design media entities that you all are subscribing to, keeping tabs on, whether it be digitally or in print version. So interesting to see how many different outlets you're turning to for your design media here as well. And then as far as the work that you do, certainly today's design work does have a very digital component to the drawing of that work. So we see that from a software platform side of things, AutoCAD being the #1 most important software platform. Interestingly, Material Bank is #2. So we see that from a drawing perspective and then a materials sampling perspective. Again, going back to what are some of those biggest challenges in the work of design, sampling was on that list. So we see that happening here. Studio Designer is actually the most prevalent when it comes to the business software of design. And we know that as much as we would all love to spend our time in the creative side of our industry, keeping track of our business and moving our business forward is also incredibly important. And so seeing Studio Designer be very supportive of that certainly is indicative of having them fall on this list as well. Here's that social media breakdown, a bit different between the two sides of the industry. One thing is when it comes to information, social media is not what they're using. Nobody's going to Instagram to get a detailed product spec, right? Nobody's going to Pinterest to get a detailed product spec. What are we using social media for? We're using it for project inspiration. We're using it for industry news and for networking. But again, Instagram being definitely the most preferred on the residential side of the industry, with Pinterest and LinkedIn being more prevalent on the commercial side. Now, the biggest business challenges. Like I said, we would love to spend so much time on the creative portions of our business, but we all have to earn money. So looking at this, you see creating new business, earning appropriate fees. This has historically always been near the top. It is #1 this year, but you see creating new business and diversifying that business. I know that Studio Designer, as a partner to you all, they do offer some support here. They have design tools that make it easy to gather online sources of inspiration and kind of start those projects up quickly. There's certainly presentation integration, something where you can really seamlessly work with PowerPoint or whatever presentation tool you're using to present to your clients. 3D rendering visualizers, and then really helping to use those compelling visuals. Like we said earlier, that's maybe a quarter or more of your time, having these tools to convert, right? Helping the client see the picture of what it looks like done so they can visualize their space, visualize themselves within their space. Such a key benefit of that platform there as well. Now we also see dealing with clients' increasing demands as third. I don't know how I'm going to help you with that. I haven't figured out a tool to help you with that just yet. But shrinking timelines, that is something that is reminiscent on both sides of our industry. The time crunch has not accommodated for the workload, for the delivery lead time changes over the last several years. So shrinking timelines is definitely a key challenge. And on the residential side, like I said, Studio Designer does have some ways in which that tool can help to support you. It does have kind of the all-in-one system where you consolidate tools for accounting, project management, time tracking, and client communications. I think that when we think about all the content switching that we're doing throughout our day, having all of that in one platform certainly would help to consolidate those activities so that we aren't trying to mentally be in so many places, kind of have all of that consolidated into one space. Now that gets us through the main portion of this presentation. I will say, if you are curious about the commercial side of the industry, our full report on this study that you'll be able to find published on our website in a few weeks, that does have kind of the comparison, the side by side with the commercial focus as well. So that will be available, but I will make sure to get this copy to you all. This does have some exclusive content that is not part of our broader study. So some of the slides that you'll see here are not publicly published for everyone else. So with that, Alexia, I'll kind of see here what we've got in the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. No questions so far. Well, I will say, I'll have Alexia include a link that you can connect with me, and you're welcome to message me at any time. I always love to have, new LinkedIn friends. Lisa, it's so nice to virtually see you. Lisa and I went to school together, so back in our design school days. So thank you all for dialing in. I appreciate your feedback and that, this is certainly helpful. Katie, a recent graduate, wondering where the best place to start to get a job as a residential designer. Great question. I would say, Katie, you can also follow up with me on LinkedIn as well. But I think that looking at, I would decide first what type of firm you want to work at, because there are some real differences between like a real large firm in a major metropolitan area and working for more of a boutique firm. And also deciding kind of what boundaries you're looking for from a work from home, work remotely, work hybrid, work fully in office, what type of culture you're looking for in the firm. I would use that to start to narrow your search. And then beyond that, you'll have this document, and I'm happy to point you in the direction of how you go about finding listings. If you have a specific metropolitan area you want to land in, I can help you point you in the right direction of where do I find the local ASID chapter so that I can meet other designers, find out where there might be opportunity, that sort of thing. And Margaret, you didn't miss here the full document that's going to be published on our website. All of this residential information will be there, but we also have a lot more bar charts that include the commercial side of the industry as well. So essentially double the charts, which none of you all signed up for. This was already a lot of bar charts, even for somebody that loves data like myself. So that's the main difference is there are a few slides, those construction slides, those are not part of our public study, but we do that here for Studio Designer to be a partner to you all. But the rest is really taking a look at how that side-by-side comparison looks between the commercial side of our industry and the residential side. Where are designers advertising and what's the publishing date? Maria, I'll get back to you on the publishing date. Where are designers advertising? That's not something that we benchmarked in this study. I'll have to get back to, if that anonymous person wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to connect with you on that. But that's not a statistic that's part of this study. However, I can look through some of our other research and see if we have any directional information for you there. What's the most attended commercial trade show? I do happen to know that off the top of my head. The most attended is NeoCon/Design Days in Chicago in June for the commercial side of our industry. Now, the commercial side of our industry also includes healthcare designers, education designers, hospitality designers. So we do get quite a spread outside of just corporate workplace. But NeoCon and Design Days are the most attended. And then you see for segment specific trade shows like Ed Spaces for design, for education designers, you know, or the Health Design Expo, things like that. So hopefully that helps there, Leslie. Let's see, did I miss any? Is there any information on business support services? Fractional HR, fractional accounting, in-house employees? Great question. This is from an anonymous attendee. Alexia, I don't know what Studio Designer might offer as far as a fractional HR or certainly from an accounting perspective, what the Studio Designer platform offers. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Well, definitely we work with a network of accountants that specialize specifically in accounting for interior designers. And as well as that, Studio Designers platform has an accounting system that again is built for the needs of interior designers. So if that person who asked that question is interested in that, I would say go to our website and get a demo, and our team can talk you through your options there.
Thanks. And then average budget for residential clients, that was, and that is included in the stack. That was the 100,000 to 250,000. Well, if we've answered everyone's questions, I'm happy to hang out here for a few minutes with Alexia. But again, I hope that y'all will connect with me on LinkedIn and we can keep the conversation going. Thank you all for taking the time to attend. It really is, it's such an honor to be able to bring this information to you. And I hope that it's helpful. If not just feeling validating, hopefully it does help to inform you and some of the decisions that you have to make in 2025. So appreciate all of your time.
Thank you. And before we wrap up, I also want to thank you all on behalf of Studio for joining us today for this important conversation. And a quick poll is going to pop up on your screen in just a few moments. If you're interested in learning more about Studio Designer and how we can support your business and any of these challenges that interior designers face today, let us know by responding to our poll. I'm going to launch it now. Great. And if you'd like to talk with a member of our team about Studio Designer, I'm also just going to drop a link into the chat and we'd love to hear from you.
Perfect.
Thank you. I'm going to let the poll run for a few minutes. And if anyone has more questions, feel free to drop them into the chat for Erica.
Yes, by all means. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your time.
All right, great. Thank you again, everyone. And a recording will be sent out to all registrants. So thank you all and hopefully see you later on another Work of Design Live. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye.